So this is the exercise that we will be doing, the one we have gone through already. So you see it covers the general ledger, then it covers AP and AR. Okay. And then printing. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to start the program. And sometimes I find I have to start the program a number of times. So if that does happen and you see me restarting it, then no worries. Just know that's me. Let me use 01/01/2019. Okay, now I know that I've got the right file because there is no accounts payable or receivable. So it's just the general ledger with nothing in there. I'll check the chart of accounts just to show you guys there's absolutely nothing. So we're going to start the exercise from there. Okay, so the first thing I would do would be to change the name. So I'll go to Common Services. I will demonstrate even though I know it's already Joan. So in Common Services, Company Profile, I can put in my name, Tele Inc. And of course, for a real company, you will put in the details for tax number, business number, legal name, etc. You will do that in the real world. And the address and phone numbers would also be there. Now in options, we don't really need to change anything. We have our Canadian dollars indicated here, and we have our 12-month periods selected and our date range for 30 days. So if I should enter January the 1st today, and then next week I come in and I enter February the 1st, more than 30 days, it's going to give me a warning. If there is no account that you're trying to post to, the account number does not exist, it will give you an error message. And if there's a locked fiscal period, then it'll give you a warning. If there's an inactive GL account, so the account exists, but it's inactive, you have made it inactive, then it will tell you that there's a problem, you cannot post to that account. If the company has different locations, this is what all four of these would be for branches or country code if they operate in different countries. And if the company uses multi-currency, then you would select multi-currency here. So I will save the changes I've made and I will close. And back to the exercise, it asks for me to set up the account segment, and the name of the account is ACCOUNT account. So the segment is called account. And it also says if it's necessary, set up any divisions and call that division. So if the company has departments, then we will also set up the departments. Okay. So what this means is I would look at my chart of accounts to see whether there are divisions, and there are divisions. So I know that I would need to set that. Okay. Now, whenever you have activated any module, whether it be general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, before you use those modules, always go to the setup. So general ledger is already activated, but not yet set up. So I will go to GL setup, and we will set up the options, any source codes that we would like to add, any source journals, and segment codes that are divisions, and structure code. The group codes are already there. We don't have recurring entries in this exercise, and we do not use the optional fields. So I'll start options. In the options page, entirely up to the company, what contact name will be here. For now, I will put mine. And in the account field, I've indicated that it should use account groups. So account groups, remember, are assets, liabilities, owners, equity, etc. And now in Sage, they have been broken down even further. So we have groups that are accounts receivable, accounts payable, cash and cash equivalents, right? So of course, you will see that later on. If your company keeps track of inventory that it sells and purchases, then you would choose maintain quantities and you will put that on. We have not yet added any accounts to our chart, so we do not have the closing account, which is retained earnings. So we will not be able to add that until we've added our chart of accounts. We don't want to put any passwords, so we will leave use GL security off. In posting, if your company wants you to keep budget sets, then you will indicate how many budget sets you want to keep and you would select those. This course does not include budgets, so we do not put anything on there. So now at the bottom here are things that you would like. So if you want to have postings or be allowed to post in a previous year, then you will put allow postings on. If you want to have a trial posting, what I mean by that is you want to be able to provisionally post something, but it's not a permanent change on your account. It's just to see how it affects your financial statements. Then you would put that on. If you would like to print or be forced to print a batch of transactions before you post them, then you would put the check mark next to forced listing of batches. If this is on, must print the batch prior to posting. Okay? Now there are source codes that we use in Sage, and these source codes, they identify the type of transactions that we have or that we will be recording. So an example of that would be GLOB, which could mean General Ledger Opening Balance, or GLSA, General Ledger Sales. Okay, so a source code will identify the type of transaction that you're entering. Now, in the section where it asks about the years keeping history, that will depend on the company that the country that you're working for. But in Canada, we're keeping for 6 years. So we'll put 6 years here. And we'll keep our records so that if there's any audit or anything of that sort, then we can always have those to show. Also, to bring to your attention that even though we are working with the current year 2019, that Sage created the year 2018 because it always takes into consideration that you'll be entering ending balances for December 31st, 2018, which will then be rolled into 2019 for January. So that's why it creates the previous year. So far, we have not yet posted anything. We have not done a batch. And so our posting sequence and next posting provisional posting sequence is still at 1. And there's no batch before. Now in segments. In this area, we're going to give some information for our chart of accounts. So in our chart of accounts, we have accounts which are 4 digits long. And we also have divisions, departments, which are 3 digits long. And we were told we should call the account segment account. And I'll put the length 4 digits. And that we should call the divisional accounts division. And that has 3 digits. So I'm just going to show that to you right now, just to remind you. These are our chart of accounts, and the account numbers are 4 digits long, while the divisional numbers are 3 digits long. We've got sales admin and sales service. So the 2 divisions that we will be using would be admin and service. So once we have done that, we must indicate which number is the account segment. Segment number 1 and 2 is what we're using. However, segment number 1 is account. So we're going to choose 1. Like the account segment is segment number 1. That's what that means. Between our account numbers and division, we will have a dash. So that's what the segment delimiter is. You can have different things. Most common is a dash. We have not yet created a structure code, therefore we are not going to put anything. In fact, we are not able to put anything until we've created a default structure code. Okay, so just a quick review. Right here, your name, phone number, fax number. In account, use account groups. Later on, we'll come back to put in the closing retained earnings account. And in posting, we've put in the number of years to keep the record, and we have noted that we would need to come back in when we're starting to enter current year transaction for 2019, because we have the previous year as the current year right now. And in segments, we've indicated what our account and division looks like in our chart of accounts, what the number of digits are, and which of those segments would be the account segment, how they're separated. So I will save this and then close. So now I'll move on to the next section, source codes. And we've got a few that we'd like to set up. So in the source code, we're going to set up these things. Okay. So I will just put that there, and I'll go into source codes, and we'll start entering those. GLCR, and that one is for the cash receipts. And I'll add CD, disbursements. And I'll add that. Okay, and I also have PU and SA. So PU for purchases, and SA for sales. I've added all of those that were asked for, so I will now close. And I will move on to the next section, which is our source journals. Now, source journals are journals in which you enter specific types of transactions. So the first one we have is our general journal. I showed that to you. So the general journal is here, and it will include transactions such as general journal entries, closing entries, and consolidated entries. While the cash receipts will include only cash receipts. The cash disbursements journal will only include cash disbursements, purchases, purchases, sales, sales. Okay, so I'm going to add those now. So I type the name, and then I look for the source codes that I would like to use. So JE, and I must select them individually. It does not allow us to select multiple source codes at the same time. So I will just select them one at a time. So there they are. That's the general ledger, or the general journal added. Okay, so now I'm going to do the cash receipts journal. And so I don't need any of these, so I will just click delete on the, or press delete on the keyboard to remove them. And I could just replace this one with what I want. So GLCR. And then I can just add that one. So that's modifying. And if I'd like to add a new one, I will show you that when I do the purchases. We are going to use the new button. So I'm going to modify this one again because it's easy to do. It's disbursements. And then I will just change this to CD. I could even do that very easily by typing it rather than looking it up and then add. Now, we're going to go on to our purchases journal. And actually, I want to choose new for that one so that you can see how it works. So let me just click new, which I've done. So it's now blank. And I'm going to just type purchases journal. And I will choose the appropriate type of transaction to use, which is purchase. That's it, and add. Then I'll choose new again just to demonstrate it. I will say sales journal. And I will add the sales journal to that. So GLSA and add. So once I've done all of them, I close the window and we can move on now to the next section, which is segment codes. So I'll go to segment codes. And in the segment codes, what you're adding here would be the different divisions, the different departments. So we've already said that we have two, 100 admin and 200 is sales. So these are the two divisions, otherwise known as segments, okay? So I've added both of those. I'm just going to check the exercise just to be sure that I've done the right thing. No. So this one is not sales, but service. So I'm just going to put service rather than sales. So the service division and admin division. Division 100 is admin, division 200 is service. Great, and then I'll save. So that completes the options, the source code, the source journal, and the segment codes. And we're moving on now to the account structures. I'll go double click there and I will just let you know what we would need to do here for that. So whenever you have divisions, you have to then indicate what the division and the account looks like on your chart so that we're defining how it is set up. So I will start off and I will give it a code that makes sense. So for the account structure, I'm going to say it's ACC for short, and I'll put the full name here, account structure. And what this actually doing is it's asking you, well, do you want to have this account type or structure show up when you start to enter your accounts? If that's the case, you would select that so that this structure code comes up automatically. Otherwise, nothing shows. And after that, what is included in this structure? Would it be account and division, or would it be just account? Or would it just be division? Of course, if it is account structure, then it must include the account. So the account, which are 4 digits long, would be included in the account structure. And only the account. If you look at that, you will see account structures are only the ones with 4. Divisional structures are these ones. Okay. So this is complete, and I'll add. Now I'll do division. Either click new or I can modify, which I like to do it very quickly. So I'm going to modify. I'll call this DIV for division for short, and I'll change this to division. So that's the division structure. In this case, it's just like you have on your chart. Your chart decides, it's a decisive report that's going to tell you how to set up your chart of accounts. So for the division, you notice the account number appears first and then the division number. It's not the other way around. The division number did not precede the account number. So when you're telling the computer, you're telling Sage how your structure will be for your chart of accounts. That's what you have to do here. So account, then division. That's it. So for the divisional structure, you will have the account number first, then the division number, and add. So I'll show you the difference. For account, only account is included. For division, both account and division are included, and depending on the order that it is on your chart of accounts, then you will have to use that order to decide whether account comes before division or division comes before account. So I'll save my changes and I'll close. So that completes the options: source, journal, segments, account structures, and I'll just show you the groups. We do not need to add groups. They're already there. So I've double clicked and I can use the find button, which is here, to find or look at the list of accounts, account structures, account groups. So these are all the groups. You have the first, which is cash and cash equivalents. Number 2 is accounts receivable. Then we have inventory, and number 4 is other current assets, etc., etc. Okay, so when we're entering or adding our accounts for the chart, we will have to put the appropriate groups for that. So I'll close this out, and I'll also close. We're finished with the setting up. So I'm going to move back to the exercise and just see where we go from here. So we have completed this section, set up the general ledger options, and print the GL options report showing default account structure and closing account. Okay, so we have not yet done the chart of accounts, so cannot do that. I'm going to go on to setting up the chart of accounts. So these are all the accounts we're going to be adding. Okay, let me just give you a quick overview of that, and then I will start adding them now. Okay, so I go to the general ledger and I look for GL accounts. I double click there, or you can click once and then choose accounts. Chart of accounts is for displaying the accounts, while accounts is for adding, modifying, and deleting accounts. So I'm going to double click on accounts and I'll start adding these accounts. 1100, which is bank. Notice the account structure ACC is already there because we have set it as a default. And of course, the bank is a debit balance. A normal balance is debit. It goes on the balance sheet. And the group is 01, which is cash and cash equivalents. The status of the account is active, not inactive. It is not a control account, nor is it auto-allocated. So we're going to leave it as is and then add. Then we'll continue on by adding all the other accounts. So 1200 is accounts receivable. That, of course, is also a debit balance, and it goes on the balance sheet. So that remains the same. However, the group changes to 02, which is accounts receivable, and add. Now we're at 1260, which is allowance for bad debts. Now that is a credit. It goes on the balance sheet. One moment. So it goes on the balance sheet, and it is, you could leave it as accounts receivable as the group because it doesn't have one of its own. So accounts receivable, And everything here will generally be the same. You want to have your account as active and none of these until you get to a control account, which I'll cover in the next, in our actual book exercise. Okay, so for this one, it's complete. We're going to add, and we'll continue on with the inventory. So 1300. Inventory is a debit balance, so we're going to go debit. It goes on the balance sheet and it has its own group. I believe it's 03, but let me check. Yes, 03 and add. So that's it, add. And we're moving on to 1400, which is office supplies inventory. And that one is also a debit, goes on the balance sheet and its inventory group, and add. Now let me look. 1500 is prepaid expenses. So for the prepaid expenses, it's also a debit, goes on the balance sheet, but it's other current assets. I'm selecting from the finder of current assets because this is money that the company pays as a down payment for goods they have not yet received, and they can get that money back very quickly if they no longer want the goods. So I will click add. Now I'll continue on. 2000 is accounts payable, and that one is a credit balance, goes on the balance sheet, and it has its own group. So we're going to look for that, accounts payable. And I'll either double clicking or selecting, either way. So here we are, this is good, and then add. 2020 is Hst Payable. And that is also a credit balance, but it's not accounts payable. So we're going to put that as other current liabilities. So that's number 10. It's a credit balance, goes on the balance sheet, so everything else is good, and we add. Now 2200 is Hst Receivable, or sometimes you will see it as recoverable. Same thing. That is a debit balance. It's a contra entry to the Hst Payable. So the net of those two will either be a refund to you or a remittance to the government. Okay, so debit goes on the balance sheet, and it is also other current liabilities, and add. 2220 is prepayment received. So this is money that your customer has sent you for a down payment on goods that you've sold them. So this money is a liability, because if the customer decides they don't want to have the goods anymore, then they will be given back this money. So that is a credit, and it is also other current liabilities. Okay, and then add. So I'm going to go up now to the 3000, which is common stock. That too is a credit, goes on the balance sheet, but the group changes to shareholders' equity, and active, and add. Next, we'll go on to the retained earnings, which is, one moment, 3200. So 3200 retained earnings. I'll just type that. And from there, it's also a credit, goes on, it has its own type. So we'll have to select retained earnings here, and then shareholders equity is the group. So let me just quickly look it over. 3200 retained earnings, account type, account structure, sorry, credit, retained earnings, and the group is shareholders equity, and add. Great, almost finished. We're heading now to the sales. So 4,000 sales has division. It will be allocated to two different divisions. So we're going to put 4,000, and in fact I don't have to put the dashes, it will automatically put the dashes for me. So 4,100, and I will put sales for admin. Sales is of course a credit, but the structure code changes to division because it has a division attached to the account number. So I will choose division. I chose that by going to the finder and choosing division. It's not retained earnings. It goes on the income statement. It's revenue. And so I will also need to change the group to revenue, which is right here. Okay, so this completes the sales. 4,100, sales admin, divisional structure, it's a credit, and it is revenue, and add. Now I'll add the 200. So I'm modifying this 4,100 to read 4,200 for the second division. So that is our service division. Everything else remains the same, of course. So I can just go ahead and add. Now I'd like to do the sales discount and returns. The number is 4020. No divisional number there. So I'll modify it. So sales discount is the opposite of the sales. So that would be a debit. Of course, it still goes on the income statement, and you can certainly leave it as revenue. And some people, some company will also use cost of sales. Okay, but it offsets the revenue, so it's quite all right. Most companies will leave it as that. So once I've checked it over and it's good, I will go to add. I've forgotten to change the structure back to ACC, so I'll do that and add. Awesome. So I'll continue on. We have about 4 more to go and we'll be finished the chart of accounts. 4,500 is interest income. And that would be a credit because it's income, revenue. So now, depending on the company, this may be a main source of income for them, or it could be other revenue. So again, your company will dictate that, but for now, I'm going to choose other revenue. Everything else remains the same, and add. So I'll close here. Oh, actually, I'm not done, so I have a few more to do. So after adding, I will do the 5,000, which is purchase discounts. Purchases discount. And of course, that's going to be a credit because it's the opposite of purchases. So credit to the purchase discounts. It goes on the income statement, and it is a part of the purchases group. So I selected that and then add. Now 60/30. 60/30 is a write-off. Write-off account, so it's a debit. Although in this account you can have both debits and credits. It goes on the income statement, and I would put it as other expenses and add. And then the last account is 60/50, which is bank/credit card charges. And I can leave that as other expenses as well. Okay. And remember, whether you use 21 or 22 doesn't matter. I'll just show you. Just look at the group category and you'll see that it doesn't matter. So I'm going to put 21, and notice the group category is still other expenses. Okay. We'll leave that, and I'll leave it as that. So I've added all the accounts now, including the retained earnings account. So if I really like to just not forget to add it in our options, I will go back to our general ledger setup, options, and I will choose account. And in this section, default closing, I will now look to find the retained earnings, and I'll choose it. And by the way, I would like to remind you that if after adding all the accounts, including retained earnings, if retained earnings is not shown here, it means that you did not choose the right type. Maybe you have left it as income statement or balance sheet type, but it's not retained earnings if it does not show. Only the retained earnings type will show in this window. Okay. So there we have it. And so I can save this change that I've made, and I can close. Now it asks for us to print the GL options, which shows some of these things that we have done in the setup. So I would go I would go GL reports, and I would go in and I can print any of the things here. So GL options is the one that I've asked for. So there's the options. I would go there and print. And I believe I've already set my print to the screen, so it will show you on the screen. So I'll give it a moment. There it is. So this report shows you some of the settings you've done. Now just make it a little bit bigger. Sometimes when you click on it, it would magnify, but I'm not seeing that happen. So let me just set it like that. So each report, when you print it, it will always show you the report name here at the top left. Here's the company name. These are the different, this is the database ID for the company. If we had the contact phone number, fax, etc., that would show there. There's our retained earnings. It shows us that we're using groups. So when we print our financial statements, it will show us current liabilities, other current liabilities, etc., because the groups are being used. No budget sets, not posting to previous years. We're not doing provisional postings. The current fiscal year is 2018. That's what it is until we've posted our ending balance. Number of years to keep the history. There's our default structure code, and these are our structures. Okay, so this is the report, the GL options report. I'll close this out, also close the print screen out, and I will move on to the next step, which is to enter the ending balances. So this step we're doing. Enter the ending balances for December 2018 as shown below, and made it pretty short so that we don't waste time having to type a lot. So just for accounts, keep in mind that if you're doing this in the real world for a company, that you may have a lot more ending balance. In fact, you will have a lot more accounts in your ending balance. So I'm going to enter ending balances now. How to do that? I go to the General Ledger Transactions, and Batch List allows us to create a batch in which we can enter any transaction. So, or many transactions, by the way. So in this case, we only have one big transaction for the ending balance. I'm going to click New to create the batch. I'm going to indicate what the batch is. So it is ending balances for December 2018. Okay. And I will copy that and put it also as the entry description. Now, the date would not be the 1st of January. It would have to be the date of that transaction, which is the 31st of December 2018. Notice I'm only changing this date. Notice the date, January 1st, 2019 is still here, and the period 2019-01, that's for January. But as soon as I move from this field by tabbing or clicking, it changes. Now it shows me the posting date as December 31st, 2018, and it also shows me the period and year has changed to 2018, the 12th period of 2018. The source code. Now, every single transaction that you'll be entering must have a source code which identifies the type of transaction. So those source codes we've added, plus those that are a part of the program as defaults, will be listed when I click the Finder button, and I'll make the screen big so you can see them all. So there they are. So the ones in caps are the ones that I've added, and the others are defaults. The one I would like to use for this, since I don't have one that says GL opening balances, is the regular JE. So let's see if I can find that. There it is. So I'm going to use GLJE, and I'm going to use the quick method so that whenever I type for the first line the reference or the description or anything else over in this section here, comments, etc., then it will repeat whatever is in those fields. It will repeat them for each line. So in this transaction, I've got 4 lines because there are 4 accounts for which I'm entering ending balances. I'm going to just make this a little bit wider so you can see what that is. So that says line number. Now this is very tricky because I've played around with that. Now I don't have my cursor here anymore, but if I press the insert key on my keyboard, then it will certainly allow me to continue typing. So line number 1 shows up again. I'm going to say I got this from the December 31st, 2018 trial balance, TB for short. That's where I'm getting this entry. And the description is ending balances for December. Let me see if I can make this bigger, if it will show a little bit more. So no, it's not. So I'll just widen that. So ending balances December 2018. Now, the first account for which I'm entering a balance is bank, 1100. And the balance I have here is $95,000. Press the tab key, tab, until I get to the second line, or I can press the insert key. Entirely up to you what you like to do. Second account is 1300, which is inventory. Inventory is 25,000 balance, and it's a debit. And then I'll just press the tab key and third is 3,000 for retained earnings or common stocks, and that's a credit, of course, of $10,000. That again, and 3,200, which is retained earnings, which is also a credit, and I have a balance of 10,000, so 110,000. So those are the only accounts for which I have balances for this exercise. And of course, our debits must be equal to our credits. Okay, so from there, we're going to add this entry. Great. Now that we've added the entry, we have to think of processing this entry. So how to process the entry? Give me one moment. Okay, I was just checking quickly on if there were any questions, but I don't really see anything for which I need to respond right now. So I will continue on with the exercise. Okay, so what to do now? The source code. Um, you'll notice that once I've added an entry, it goes to the next entry number. So I don't have another entry to add. So I will close this window using the X here, or I can use the close at the bottom of the screen, which I'm not sure you're seeing. So I'm going to choose the X here to close. So once I've closed the window, I'm back at the batch list window where you can print the batch with using this option, printing the batch, or you can delete the batch, or you can post the batch. We want to update the general ledger with the balances. So our next step is to post the batch. And so it tells me that it's not ready to post. Do I want to continue and post the batch? I would say yes. And just to remind you then, the ready to post, if you prefer, you could say double click to say yes, but it's not necessary, okay? If it's yes, then you're not asked any questions. It just posts the batch for you. Great, so we have posted the batch, and just to show you what it has done, I will go to the general ledger. I'll check the trial balance, and the trial balance for December 2018 is what we would need. We haven't posted anything in 2019 instead. December is the 12th period, and then print. So this is our trial balance. Our accounts have been updated with the balances we've just entered. Great, I'm going to continue on with the exercise. Now that we have entered the ending balances for general ledger, what the company would do next is would just have you enter current transactions for the year. So I don't have in this exercise a current transaction for general ledger. However, it would make sense that we now create the new year so we don't forget. So when we have current transactions for January 2019, then we will be able to go ahead and pull without having any error messages. So to create a new year, the very first thing is that retained earnings must be set as the closing account, which we've already done. So now we'll go into periodic processing. And in this option here, you will find create new year. So here it is. So I'm going to double click there, and it will tell you exactly what will be done once you click process. It will create a new account record for processing transactions for 2019. So the new year, basically. It will remove all fiscal sets older than 2013 because we've given it 6 years to keep transactions, and it will create and post entries to transfer the balances for any income and expense accounts to the retained earnings, because income and expenses are temporary accounts which are closed out at the end of each period, and then it will change the year from 2018 to 2019. Okay. This other option, you must create a fiscal calendar for 2019 before you can proceed. It's usually already done by the program, so you don't need to do that. You can just go ahead and process. Now it's finished, and it tells you it has created the new year 2019. Nothing or no records transferred because we have not entered anything for 2013, and that it has created the current year 2019. Now I'll go a bit further, and I'll even show you in the general ledger setup options. In posting, notice now that the current year has been changed to 2019. Okay. Also in the segments page, notice that we do have our default structure code shown here. All right, so continuing on, this actually completes the general ledger section. And I mean, we could print a number of reports like the trial balance or the balance sheet. We've printed the trial balance already. Actually, I will do that. So to print a financial statement in SAGE, you must go to the general ledger. Under that, you will find financial reporter and print financial statements. Now, mostly you'll find this is blank when you get in, and if it is, you will go to Browse, and you will choose the format that your company uses. So for me, I'm going to start with the first one. And I'll make sure that preview is on so it prints to the screen. That's all you really do need to do, and then print. So it's taking just a little bit to do. Give me a moment while it processes. Okay, so it has created the balance sheet for us, and there it is. So there's the balance sheet with the information. And I'll close that out, and I'll show you now how to print the income statement. So from here, you would browse. You would find one with INC. Notice the balance sheet is BAL. INC 1, and I will print that. So of course, I printed for January 31st, 2019, so there is nothing in our income statement. And even if I do print for December 31st, 2018, there won't be anything because we did not enter any income or expenses as ending balances. But you have an idea of how to print these statements. So I'll close this, also close that out. And I'll repeat, financial reporter, print financial statements, browse for the report that you want, and then click print. So this is the income statement and print. And for the balance sheets, you would click browse and choose one of the balance sheet formats. I also just want to point out that these are different formats in terms of how or what is displayed. So the first one shows only the current year information, while the second one shows a comparison of previous and current year, and the other ones show budget and current. Same thing for the income statement. So they're just different styles. Okay. Awesome. So I would say that you've got a very good understanding and overview of the general ledger. That's pretty much it. Now, our intention is to move on with the same exercise, but this time we're going to do the accounts payable and accounts receivable. So before we can do those, we're also going to have to activate the tax uh, authority, the tax services, and the bank services. And the reason for that is you will need a place to deposit money that you receive from your customers. You will need a place from which to write checks to your vendors. And of course, when you make a sale, you're going to collect taxes from your customers. And when you make a purchase, you're going to pay taxes. So it is crucial that you set up, in fact, it must be done. You must set up the bank and the taxes before you can move ahead with AP and AR. So let's do that. So for the purpose of this exercise, I've only given us one tax authority. We've got two tax classes and one tax group and one bank. And this is the banking information. So we're going to proceed by activating the bank and the tax. To do this, you would go to Administrative Services and you will look for Data Activation. Double click there and say yes to continue. Select what you want. So if you chose the bank, it will automatically choose the others. So it has chosen to also activate the subledger, GL subledger, which must also be done, and the tax services. So great. We will activate those. Once those are activated, you can also go back and activate the AR. So I'd, I'd like to just do that for now, just to keep this very straightforward. So we're going to finish off the bank and the tax. We'll come back and activate AP and AR after that so that we can continue. Great. So once you have activated the bank and tax, you will find them under Common Services. See that? Bank Services, Tax Services. They were not there before. So let's start with the tax services. The tax authority is HST. And I would recommend putting on allow tax in price, which will allow the computer or SAGE300 to calculate the tax that is included in the total of an invoice. So if you're looking at the invoice and you're not seeing the tax separate, then you would put the full amount and indicate that the tax is included. And with this option on, SAGE would automatically calculate the tax amount that is included in the full invoice amount. Okay. So that's good. Your tax base, again, really, your company will tell you what they want. Most common is a selling price. Report level, most common is the invoice level or no reporting. But this is the one to use if your company does not say otherwise. Maximum tax allowable, yeah, okay, we're not going to change that. The government can take as much tax as they want from us, unfortunately. Okay, so I'm leaving that as is. And in accounts, now we have to put in the different accounts that are applicable for our taxes. So tax liability account can only be one thing, HST payable. It's the liability account. And recoverable would be our HST receivable. Remember, I said that you can use either of those names. Means the same. So I'll double click to accept that. And then I will add. Okay. So I've added the one tax authority. If I had more, I would add them here and then close the window. So only one, so I'll close. By the way, expense separately, we don't really do that for our taxes. What we do is we add our tax that we pay on goods as a part of the cost. It's a part of our expense. So that's why we do not check that off. We're moving in the line here. So tax authority is done. Now we'll go to the tax classes, and we have two. So for the tax authority, which we've added, we have the tax classes, and we will enter for sales and purchases, and we'll enter for customers and items. And when we are doing the purchases, by the way, we will also have to enter for vendors and items. So I'll demonstrate that now, starting with sales. The two tax classes will be added will be taxable and non-taxable. So I'm going to type here taxable. I'll press the tab key to move down, non-taxable. And I'm going to copy this one to save me some time. So I've copied that, and I'm going to save this. This is finished for sales and customers. Now I must do sales and items. Same thing. I've completed the sales. Now I will go back to purchases. Now it changes to vendors. Same thing. And of course, items. Now, if you forget to do the items, when you go to set up the tax rates, you will not be able to set the tax rates because it will not give you a field in which to type the rate. So items are important. You must set those up. Right, so I have finished both of those, and I'm just going to show you a quick way to check, double check before moving on. So you're printing each of these. Notice that it only prints for sales, and then you would have to come back and do purchases. So sales, anything with a blank means it will look from the beginning, it will print from the beginning, and the Z's just means the end. So from the beginning to the end. All. So this is what it looks like. HST, harmonized taxes for your customer, they're taxable or non-taxable. Item, they're taxable or non-taxable. And of course, your report name is here. So I will close this. And I'll move back now to this area to choose purchases. And this is your purchases. Notice again, you've got your vendor and you've also got your items. Okay. I'll close this out. And then I will also close this screen. So you can, of course, use the close button at the bottom of your screen whenever you're closing a window, or you can use the X to close out a window, whatever you prefer. Now that we know that we've added all of those, I'm going to close this window as well. And now we move to the rates. So our tax rate here is 13%. So we're going to find the tax authority, which is, we only have one, HST. Notice the transaction type, sales. We also have purchases. Let's start with sales. If an item is taxable, then it is 13%. Non-taxable is 0. Therefore, you leave it as is. Non-taxable 0. Okay, and save. Then purchases and do the same. Taxable 13%. Non-taxable 0. Save. So we have added the authority, the classes, and the rates now. And what I meant when I say you would not be able to type, if you forget to do an item, you would not have these fields would not be active. Okay. So what to do if you find that you come into this window and you're not able to enter the tax rates, then you'll go back into tax classes and ensure that you do the tax items, the items. Okay. All right, so let me close this and we move on now to tax groups. The exercise asks for one group, which is ONT, Ontario for short. And notice again, we have that transaction type, sales, purchases. So remember, if you do sales, you must come back and do purchases. Now, in this area, I'm just going to put subject to HST. And it's not finished. We have different ways of calculating our taxes. It can be by the summary, meaning there's a subtotal and then the tax shows, or it could be detailed line by line. So the item that is purchased or sold, each item will give you the option to have the tax next to it if it is in detailed format. If it's summary, which is most common, you'll have a subtotal of all the purchases, all the items purchased, and then you will calculate the tax on that subtotal. Most people forget to add the tax authority here, but if it's not here, then SAGE does not know what to use to calculate the tax on invoices. So we must remember to put the tax authority here. Great. Once we've done that, we click add. And after adding that, we must go back and do the purchases. So for purchases, this is applicable, so I'm going to leave it there, but I must add the tax rate, tax authority. So here we are. We have done both of those, so that's good, and we can just print to see what it looks like. Same situation, sales, purchases, one and then the other. So this is what it looks like, your sales tax groups. Of course, if there are many other groups, then it would show here. And sometimes you'll find companies grouped by provinces. If they have a business that is international, they've got locations in other countries, then it could be grouped by countries as well. Okay. So that's the first one, sales. And then we'll do the purchases. Oh, did I print the purchase? Let me go back and see. Oh, no, I did not. So I'll go back to print. This time I'll choose purchases and print. There we go. Okay, purchases, tax groups. and it shows you the tax group here. That's it. And then close. Easy peasy, everything. And I'll close out all these windows because I no longer need them. Practice closing windows when you're finished with them. Otherwise, you'll have a number of windows open. So of course, you can look at the tax reports. These are all the things that you can print for the tax reports. The authorities, the tax classes, rates, tax groups, tax tracking can all be printed from here. All right, so our next step is to add our bank. And we've got TD as our bank, Toronto Dominion Bank. So to do that, we go into Bank Services, Banks, and TD. And of course, for business, even for your personal accounts, you will have transit number. I'll just put something. I mean, it doesn't have to. I'm just going to add just random numbers here. Um, and then this will have the first number as our first deposit slip as number one. If the company says, no, 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 I've done 1,000 deposits already, so the next deposit number would be 1001, then you're going to put 1001 here. The error or write-off spread is for your bank reconciliation. It's asking, well, what is the error spread that is acceptable by you? If you are out by $1, would that be okay? $2, would that be okay? I recommend you balance to the penny, you reconcile to the penny. Therefore, the error spread or write-off is 0. How long do you want to keep account before clearing? That company will tell you what they want, but for us, we're going to use 45. So 45 days is what we are going to be using for this, okay? All right, so once we've done that, we go into account and we're going to be putting in the account numbers that are needed. So it basically tells you what to use, okay? So okay, so what we do now is we put the bank account. So we put the bank account number here, and I'll just let you know what the accounts are. So the accounts are for the bank 1100. I can find it or I can type it. So 1100, and then in write-off 6030. And then for the bank credit card charge, it's 6050. So these are the account numbers. Bank account 1100, write-off account 6030, credit card charges account 6050. Now your company will have their address, so you will put the address and everything here. And the check stocks, I could put that right away, but because I don't have the accounts payable activated, it will not give me the check stock styles that I would like to use. So I'm not going to do that just yet. Okay, and we'll come back to this. We don't tax our bank account, so we don't put anything in the taxes section. And just on this topic, like this is an American company, Sage, so you will find that some of the things or functions we in Canada won't use, but if it's in the States, they would use that. And in balance, this just shows us our balance of our last reconciliation. So we have not yet done any reconciliations, and it's not included in the exercise. But if we had done a reconciliation, then the bank account balance that is currently in the general ledger would show right here. Okay. So for now, just the profile, the account, and nothing in address, and we'll come back to the check stock section. and I will add this. So after adding, I'm finished for now with the bank. So I'm going to close this out, and then I'm going to move on. We have just done the tax services and the bank services. Our next step then is to do either accounts receivable or accounts payable, but I will start with accounts payable because that's the exercise goes in that order. All right, so we're moving on to accounts payable. And it means then that since we do not have accounts payable here listed, it has not been activated. So we'll go to administrative services, data activation, yes to continue, proceed. And so that we don't have to come back in, I'm going to ask for us to put on both accounts payable and accounts receivable. So we'll go next and activate. Actually, I think I just want to do, let me just do accounts payable. I want to keep it individual so that it's easier for you to focus. So I'm going to put on just accounts payable. So we'll activate accounts payable, next, and activate. It's done. I will close this window. And from here, we can now see accounts payable is shown on the screen and all the different functions that you can perform for that module will be shown here. So let's see what the exercise wants us to do first. Set up. Whenever you activate a module, your next step is always to set up the options or any other settings that are necessary. So we're going to do that by going into accounts payable and AP setup. So you can either get it from here or you can get it from here. Double click. So these are the things that we will be setting up. Okay, first you start with your options. You won't get a blueprint when you get to work, but you can pretty much figure out or ask questions of what the options are that your company wants and whom they want to be contacted. Again, I'm just putting my name. And then in processing, you're going to look through and decide based on your knowledge of what the company wants and put on the options. So I always say allow. Whenever there's an allow, it doesn't affect anything, but it means that you don't have to come back and put it on if you ever need it. So allow edit to imported batches, allow edit to external batches, batches that are not created in SAGE, keep statistics, allow edit to statistics, include tax in your statistics. I would put those on. And it's entirely up to you if you want to be forced to print the batch of accounts payable before posting it. We saw this also in the general ledger. It's an option that you can decide. Now, some companies want you to have it because they want you to print the batch listing, all the transactions that you've entered, and have that batch. Check for errors, fix any errors before posting, because when you post, it's going to post permanently. And if there is an error in the batch, then you have to do reversing entries and a correcting entry. Okay, so for the purpose of this exercise, I will leave the forced listing of batches off so that I'm not forced to print the batch before I can post it. This is not a company which uses retainage. They don't retain fees, so I will not put retainage accounting on. So this is what we're going to have for now. This is our aging periods for outstanding outstanding invoices that are not yet paid. How you can report it on our what we call our Hst Payables Report. So the Hst Payables Report, which we'll see how that's printed later on, will show you all outstanding invoices, and it can group them as current, those which are current. If they're 1 to 30 days old, then it will go into the column that is 1 to 30 days old. 31 to 60 days, and it will put it in that column. So in other words, you will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns in your Hst Payables, and it will list all invoices based on the date, the times. Okay. Now, aged unapplied credit notes and debit notes, there are options. There are ways to show them on the report. That's basically what this is saying. When you print that report, how will you show your unapplied credit notes and debit notes? Credit notes are anything that you have, let's say you've received goods and you've returned these goods to your vendor because there were problems with it, then that credit note is going to be sent to you by the vendor if they don't want to send you the money right away. And you can apply that credit note to outstanding invoices or future invoices that you get from the same vendor. Okay. Debit notes that will increase your accounts payable. So that is if, for example, the vendor sent you more goods than you asked for or that you ordered, but you do want to keep these extra goods, then they would just send you a debit note for the balance, and you would enter that debit note and you would make a payment. And so it can be applied to an existing invoice, which would then increase accounts payable. Okay. So credit notes decreases accounts payable, debit note increases accounts payable. And for aged unapplied prepayments are down payments for items not yet received. So again, you have options for showing that on your report, whether it's as current or by the date, and the same thing for this. Okay. Number of days to keep any comments that you've entered for your vendors. Your company will tell you what to use, but in this case, I've left it as the default, which is 30 days. Now in transactions, you would indicate for your invoice options, your default posting date, what dates to use. So you're going to use a document date, or you can use a batch date, or you can use a session date. Most common, document date. Document date meaning the invoice date. Okay, and in the tax, you can either calculate, enter, or distribute. So calculate will automatically calculate the tax for you. Enter, you have to enter it manually. And if you enter it manually, you have to distribute it. So my recommendation would be use calculate, so it calculates automatically for you. But if at any time you need to enter, then you can choose enter on individual invoices or distribute. The default for the system, then I will leave as calculate, and the tax base also calculate, but you see you have the same options. You could also set a default tax class, and it's up to you. Otherwise, you can put it in each of the vendors' accounts, which I normally do. That's the most common. Okay. You must have a bank, of course, from which to make your payments. So I'm selecting the bank right away. Payment options. You can either do a payment, prepayment, you can apply credit notes or debit notes, or you can do a miscellaneous payment for like a one-time purchase. Okay, so this option is used when you have an invoice that you would like to pay. So the invoice is already on file and you want to make a payment for it. This option is for a down payment on a purchase order or an invoice. And this one is applying a credit or debit note to an invoice, while this one is for entering a one-time purchase or cash purchase. Most common, of course, is paying an invoice that's already entered in the system. Default order of open documents, document number. So if the document is shown, what order will it be in? How will it be sorted? And these are all the different options you can sort by. Most common is the invoice number, document number. If there is a duplicate check, like let's say you had check number 10 and you try to enter another check with the same number, then I would suggest that you have either a warning or an error message. So warning or error can be there. I would not leave it as none. I would leave it. I would put one of these two. And I like warning. Sort checks by transaction entry number or by vendor number. All depends on what your company wants. And again, the default is the most common. Default posting date, document date, instead of batch date or session date. I would definitely use document date. And of course, okay, including pending transactions. So if they're often pending transactions or checks that you have started but you've not yet finished processing, or prepayments that are not yet finished processing. So if you want to see those on your reports, it's this option is there for you. Instead of saying none, you just choose payments and investments, or all transactions, whatever your company wants. And of course, we'll put allow and allow. Okay. So these two, one is for adjusting your payment batches if you need to make any changes after you've entered transactions in the payment batches. And this one is for entering system generated checks. So system generated checks are checks that the computer will be paying out to selected vendors based on the date criteria that you've given. And in numbering, these are the length of the numbers. For example, the payment number, if it's 22 as the length, it will have 22 digits. It could be alphanumeric, by the way, so it could be 22 characters, whether they're numbers or letters. So often I would change these to shorter numbers, and right, and we have not yet created any transactions, therefore the next numbers would be one, unless your company says I want it to start at 1,000 or whatever they give you. Next batch and posting sequence number is the same thing. Well, we have not yet generated any of those, so we'll leave them as one. So let me quickly review what we've done in this window. We've put the contact name, and if there are phone numbers and fax numbers, you'll put that. In processing, we have put in the allows to allow edit to different batches, different types of batches, allow edit to statistics. We've talked about the aging period, and we've talked about how to report unapplied credit notes and debit notes, as well as prepayments, and how long to keep the vendor's comments. In transactions, we've talked about what date we'd like to see for our posting date. So we're going to use the document date, which means like the invoice date. And we want to calculate our taxes automatically. So Sage will do that for us. In our payment options, we are going to use the payment as the default because it is most common. And we're going to look at, when we look at our reports, we will see them shown based on the document number, but we have other options. You could even use document dates, so it depends on what you or your company wants. Okay, and we put our bank, which will be needed for writing checks, and we've used the default payment method as checks. Again, this is American, so it's spelled CHECK. However, in Canada, we spell it CHEQUE. Okay. Checks for duplicate checks. Warning, I've put that on rather than having none. And sorting documents by transaction entry numbers, or you've got other options here. So sorting your checks, you can choose different options. Posting date will be the document date, and any pending payments and adjustments will be included on the report. Also, we will allow for adjustments in payment batches and also allow for system generated batches and allow remittance. So if there is changes to the remittance information. So if you need to change anything for remitting your checks, etc., let's say a vendor says they've moved during the time that they've sent you an invoice and you do need to change their information, this will allow you to do that. Okay. And in numbering, we've changed the length of the different document numbers to the length 10 and save. Then close. Great, moving right along. We're now going to modify the checks. So the check window, we're going to put the type of checks that we have and the first check number, we're going to put that in. And this is the type of check form that we're going to be using. Okay, so let me do that now. All right, so to do this, we go back to our bank services, banks, and we find our bank. And in check stocks, this is where we're going to enter the information. So the style will be check and advice. So for short, CHAD. And the check number is 5055 that we'd like to start with. And the check form that I will be using should be listed now because I've got AP. So I click the Finder button here, it brings this window, and I click the drop down arrow to find them. So anything that starts with AP are what is in the Accounts Payable module. Anything that starts with BK is what's in the Bank module. So this is why we did not choose to do this section before, because all we would have had would be these formats, which are not that great. So we're going to use one from AP. Now keep in mind that these check styles are similar to those that your bank will offer you. So the bank will tell you, or you will tell the bank what you want, and then you will sync what you have gotten from the bank, the check style that you've gotten from the bank, with what's here. So if it's just a check, then you would not use one that has the format check and advice portion. You would just choose a format that only has the check portion. So I believe this is the one, AP Check 01 RPT, and then OK. That's it. Because it already has an advice, we don't have to add here advice form. So just quickly look at that. That's all we need to set, and then click Save and Close. So now we're going to go and add the account set. So I'll show you. All right, so just a moment. This is what we're going to be doing. Just take a look at that. Okay, guys, so we're going to be doing this section here. We're going to add terms. We're going to create our vendors, and we're going to create our vendor groups, and then we're going to add our vendors. Okay. So I'll just continue on. It should be much longer. So we'll just continue on here. We'll go to AP vendor. And in the AP vendors group section here, we're going to see vendor groups. So we'll double click there. And we're going to get 1 second. Actually, before I do that, let me just backtrack here. We're going to do the account set first. We're going to need it. So I'm going to do the account set. So in AP setup, I'm going to go back there and I'm going to go into account sets, double click from there. And then we're going to put the name ACCPAC. And the description that I have is all accounts payable. And now it asks for us to put the payables account, the purchases discounts account, and the prepayment account. So we're going to put that. So just a moment. I'm going to put 2,000, 5,000, and 1,500. Just like that, and then we're going to add. So these are all the different accounts that are needed here. Okay, so I will click add and then close. Now in distributions, it would be the next thing, but in the exercise, I didn't ask for that, but I do want to cover it anyway. So a distribution code is a code that can be linked to an account number. And this account number is one that you can use when you are entering transactions, or instead of trying to remember what the account number is, you can use a code. So for this one, I will just set one up for, let's say it is for inventory. So I'll just say INV inventory. Maybe more specifically office supplies inventory. I'll say no to the first one that I had. And then so what I would now need to do is to look for the general ledger accounts, and if that matches that links to that account. So I'm looking here for office supplies inventory, and I believe this is the one, so I'll select it. There it is. Okay, now you leave the discountable on, because that means the discountable means that when you have a vendor that's actually giving you a discount, you can take advantage of it. If this checkbox is off, then you're not able to take advantage of the discount in terms of making the entry. Okay, so Sage will not give you the option. So I'm going to add this and then close. A distribution set now is a set of distribution codes. So I'm going to leave that. I won't add one right now, but bear in mind that if you have like a couple of distribution codes that are similar, for example, let's say there you have the telephone expense, and there was telephone expense for the admin department and telephone expense for the service department, then you could put two codes and make it that distribution set for the telephone. You could call it telephone expense and then include the two distribution codes, telephone for admin and telephone for service. So that's what the set would be used for. You'd first need to add those two codes here and then include them as a group in the distribution sets. So I'll skip that for now, and we'll go to terms, and we're going to add one term. So the term we're adding is 2N30, which is for 2% if paid within 10 days. If not paid within 10 days, the full amount, net 30 will be due in 30 days. And of course, we calculate the discount with the tax excluded. We should not include the tax as a part of the discount. So let's see how we can do that. So we're going to put the term to N30, and then we'll put a description, 2%, 10 days, net 30 days. So I'm being very descriptive here so that you can actually review this and you'll get it. Right, and after that, we are now going to put the options. So excluded for the tax base, days from invoice days. If you can calculate the number of days for the invoice, then you will always use days from invoice days, but there are other options. You can use a table, a due date table. You can do one that's end of next month, day of next month, a specific day of next month, days from the specific date of next month. So you have other options. Most common, as you can tell, would be days from invoice date, used for net, etc. And of course, the next common one would be the table, where you can have a payment within a certain number of days, and then another 30 days, you'll have another payment. So for now, we're going to do the days from invoice for this one. And 100% is due in 30 days. So 30 goes here, while 2% is given if paid in 10 days. So this is what we would need to have for the term 2N30. So I'll add that. And since we don't have another one to add, I'm going to close this window. Now we're going to move on to here. So we're going to move on to adding the vendor group, the vendor group, which is ACCPAY for all accounts payable, and then we'll add our vendor. Okay. So let's see. So the vendor groups you'll find under AP vendors, vendor groups. All vendors. So I'll make it exactly what I've asked for. So it says all AP, so I want to make sure I'm using the same term so that you're not confused going through this on your own. And then the account sets and the terms, etc., that we have already added would be put in here. So I'm going to put account set. I'll select it. Terms, it's only one that we have. Bank code, TD, payment code, a check. Great. So we have basically just filled in the blank for what they've asked us for, and we will not be generating separate payments for each invoice. So if there are several outstanding invoices that we're paying the same vendor, we don't need to separate them. We'll just put the one check. We'll make one payment for them. In invoicing, you can decide how you would like to enter the transaction, whether it is by using a distribution set, a distribution code, or a general ledger account. So we had created a distribution code. So just to demonstrate that, we can select distribution code here and choose the distribution code for office supplies as a default. If the invoice is not for office supplies inventory, then when you're entering that individual invoice, you can change to the correct general ledger account. If there are duplicate invoices, then you want to, with the vendor and the amount the same, then I would prefer to get a warning for that. And the vendor and date the same, warning. So it's just a checkpoint, really. Okay. And the tax group, we only have one, so no mystery there. So we select that as a default. Basically, we're setting up this group with some defaults that will automatically show up in our vendor files. Okay, great. So let me just go back and show you. We've added our code by typing the code name. We just make a code for all our accounts payable, and we fill in the information requested or required for the group. And in invoicing, we added our tax and our default account number or distribution code. Now I'll add and close. We'll add the vendors now, double clicking here. And the vendor is CAT 2020. So I'll quickly show that to you. So this is the vendor we're adding. And of course, we must put the group. And I want to bring to your attention that these are not accessible. All of these tabs are not accessible because we have not yet put in the group code to fill in some of this information. So now I will select the group code, and notice they're all now accessible, and that information has been put in from the group, the vendor group. So all of this information came from the vendor group. The invoicing information is also there. So we'll look it over. Notice whenever you put in a vendor name, a short name is automatically created. For your company, you will put the business number, or it will come in automatically from what you've already entered in GL, but we did not enter anything. And in contact, whatever names and telephone numbers, etc., you got from the company, you will put there. In processing, we have most of this filled in already, but there is a credit limit that this vendor has given to us, and that's $2,500. So we'll put that credit limit there. And in invoicing, nothing needs to be changed. We have the office inventory as our default account and the taxes. Great. That's it. And now we'll add. We've added one vendor, and again, of course, in a company we'll have many, so you'll just continue adding each of those vendors. Okay. So now we're going to move on to printing the vendor's account, and then I'm going to talk about some payments after. So we're going to enter an invoice, and we're going to make payments for those invoices. So let me just go ahead and do that. So printing the vendor groups would mean we go here to print it, or you can go into AP vendor reports, and all the reports are here. So whatever works best for you. I would say put the profile on. We'll give you more information if it's not on. So this is our vendor profile. This is our vendor group. If we had many others, they would all be listed. I'll close it out, and I'll also close this window, and we're going to move on to payments. So still in accounts payable, we're going to move on to payments. And when we're making payments, one of the things that we need is a payment selection code for generating checks. So we're going to do that right now. You'll find that in AP Setup, Payment Selection Codes. AP Setup, Payment Selection Codes. Double click. Now, once you have double clicked here, you are going to put in what the code is. And I'll just show that to you once more. It's monthly for all invoices. Our bank is already there, so that's great. And in criteria, I would recommend, instead of just looking for invoices with only due dates, that we look for invoices with both due dates or discount dates. So I'll put that on. Not one or the other, but we'll look for. So instead of choosing this or this, we'll do both. So what this is, the purpose of setting this up is so that when we're giving the instructions to SAGE300 to find invoices that are due for payment, we're going to give the program a due date to look for. So it's going to be somewhat like this: on or before a certain date, and taking discounts between this date and that date. So a date range for the discounts. So that's the purpose of this, to have the computer look for invoices rather than you going through hundreds of invoices to find out what's due for payment and generating individual checks. When you set it up like this and you generate checks, it will look for those matching invoices. Okay, so now I'm going to show you this option right here for excluding a vendor. So if a vendor is scheduled to be paid, but you do not want to pay them, perhaps there's not enough money in the bank to cover their expenses, then you can exclude the vendor from the criteria. So exclude the vendor from being selected for payment by going to exclusion and selecting the vendor from the list. Of course, we're not doing that. We have only one vendor and we want to have something to select for payment. Once we've done that, we look it over, just make sure everything is good, and then add and close. Now we're going to enter an invoice, and after entering the invoice, we're going to make a payment. Okay, so here we are. We're going to do that right away. Let me close this window. Always close out windows. I should remind myself. Perfect. Now, entering an invoice in accounts payable. These are the steps. AP transactions, invoice batch list, double click there, then new, and the invoice number shows. Now I tell what this batch is about. So I'm going to say invoices, January 2019, and I will choose the vendor. The invoice date, so let me show you so we can be reminded. This is what we're doing. On January the 10th, 2019, bought office supplies inventory for $5,000 plus taxes from Catch20 Inc. Catch20 invoice number B1230 dated January the 11th, 2019. So the invoice is dated for January the 11th. Therefore, we need to put that date. And the document number, the invoice number, is B1230. So I will type that. No PO number, no order number. The document total is 5,000 plus taxes. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to type 5,000 here. I'm going to press the plus sign on my keyboard, my numeric keypad. It brings up my calculator in Sage, and I'm going to multiply that by 1.13 to include the tax. And then I'll press equal. So it's 5650 with the tax, and I'm going to paste this into the field. So that's the amount for the tax, with the tax included. And in the line for the office supplies inventory, we don't need to change the account number because it's what we're purchasing is office supplies inventory. So we're going to put the amount. The cost of that is $5,000. So it's 5,000 for the office supplies inventory. I'm putting that there. So that completes this page. Notice though that it says undistributed 5650. That's because I'm still in this line. So if I tab all the way or click somewhere else, it becomes undistributed amount 0, which is what it should always be when you're finished. Now the taxes page shows us the tax and the tax base automatically calculated. And in terms, 2% of $5,100. So that's the amount of discount that you can get. It's a possible discount if paid by discount date January 21st, 2019. So if you pay it by that date, you get $100 off. The due date for this invoice is February the 10th, 2019. Okay. So that's the terms. Now, optional fields we don't do, so we go to totals. Totals gives you a summary of what this invoice would have. So here's the total net of taxes. Here's the tax. Undistributed is 0. That means we've accounted for all the amounts that we've put in. The document total, the total of the invoice is 5,650. Less discounts if paid on time would be a net payable of 5,550. Recoverable tax $650. Tax expense separately 0. Allocated 0. Total tax will be $650. Okay. So just a quick overview. Your document page. After creating the batch, putting the description, selecting your vendor, entering the invoice date, invoice number, document total, the account to be affected, and the amount. The taxes, check to make sure the tax is calculated. The terms, check it over to make sure your discounts, if any, is shown and everything is set up properly. And your summary. Great, and then add. That's it. We've added the invoice, but nothing really happens until it's posted. So we have to post this invoice to the accounts payable to update our vendor's account. And I'm going to show you before I do that so that it's crystal clear what you have to do. So in AP transactions, there is a report called Payables Report, which shows all outstanding invoices, not yet paid invoices. So if I double click that now, and I choose to print for the end of January, because I want to see a full month, and I print, I will not be getting anything because there is nothing updated in the vendor's account as yet. So our first step then before printing that report would be to go back to our batch and post the batch. And I explained before, ready to post. If you prefer to not get this message, of course we can just say yes and go ahead and post. But if you prefer to first make the batch ready by going like this and double clicking and changing it to yes, then you can. It's most useful if you have several batches that you want to post all at once. Then you can just put them all as ready to post and then post all. Okay? If not, just simply pressing post and yes to continue. There it tells us the batch has been posted, and the second message said there was a general ledger creation completed. This means that there is a batch created also in the general ledger, because when you post to the different modules like AP and AR, that posting in each of those modules update that module. But the general ledger must also be updated, because that's where your financial statements and your trial balance are printed. So Sage automatic Sage 300 automatically creates that batch for you. So I'm going to close here, and then I'm going to go ahead and select the batch. Now it's not allowing me to post because it's already posted. So you'll see status post, and so the post is not shown anymore. Okay, so now I know that everything is good, and I can go to the general ledger, transactions, batch list, and I should see this batch from AP. See that? Source ledger, AP, and an open batch is there. And I'll just make this window a bit bigger so that you could see more. And even more, I want you to see. Okay, that's good enough actually. So you could see that that's the same batch that we have just posted. And if I open this batch, you will see a complete entry where our accounts payable is credited for that. Our inventory and our tax is debited. So of course, we need to post this to update our general ledger. And before I do that, I want to remind you by printing the trial balance. Let's go to GL reports, trial balance for January. You can see there is no accounts payable here. So it's going to be very easy for you to recognize your difference. There's also no tax. So far, that's all we have in our general ledger. Close. We'll go back to our batch in GL and post this batch because it is current information. Done. Close and close. See the status updates, by the way? So close. Now, we'll go back to our GL reports and trial balance, and we'll reprint. And there you have it. Accounts payable 5650, HST 650, and our office inventory 5,000. Great, so let's close. And let's close this as well. And the next thing I'd like to show you guys would be to go into our AP transaction reports and reprint the aged payables for the same date, January 31st, and print. So now our information for our aged payables. Notice it's in 1 to 30 days. Actually, no, it's in current, the column current. Okay, and this is our total for AP. Total outstanding. Great, I will close that, and I should also show you to always check your report name, top left. Okay. So I will close that. And actually what I would like to do is to show you how to change your session date, because we are doing January transactions now. So if you like, you can change by going to open company, and I'm going to make this date the 31st, because if I'm printing a lot of reports for the end of the fiscal period, end of that month, then I don't have to keep changing the date for each report. it will automatically put the session date there. So I'll just wait for it to finish. There we go. So let's move on now to entering this payment towards the invoice. We're going to learn how to select invoices for payment. So this you could see, we're going to look for invoices that are due on or before January the 30th. And we're going to take discounts that are available between the 12th of January and the 22nd. And our batch will be dated January 12th, and our payments will be dated January the 12th. Okay, so let's do that. Alrighty, so how to do it? These are the steps. AP transactions, create payment batch. I will double click there. I will have to select that selection code that we created. You must. Nothing could happen without that. Notice everything is grayed out. So I select that monthly payment selection code. Now we've got access to the different fields. Check payment date was the 12th, so I will change that. Batch date, they asked for us to also put the 12th on the exercise. I have that at least. And the bank is already there, so that's good. Now in criteria, we now have the options to enter the specific dates because we have chosen due date or discount date. And I'd like to show you the differences, by the way. So due date, only due date. Discount date, only discount date. Due date or discount date has both. So due on or before the 30th, discounts available between the 12th and the 22nd. Great. Now, once we've entered that, and by the way, there are no exclusions. No exclusions. Once we've entered the information for selecting the invoices that will be paid, we click register and it will show us what invoices are included. So I click on register. If the date criteria is met, then it will show us an invoice. So right here you can see we've got the invoice that we've entered, and we can take a closer look. Let me just close this up a bit and make this a little bit bigger. So a closer look at this will show us that if the invoice is not yet due, it's not due until February the 10th. However, this D next amount indicates that it's the discount date that is being recognized. So the discount date is January the 21st, and we're taking discounts available between the 12th and the 22nd. So the discount date criteria was met. So we're going to go ahead now and close this report. We're going to go ahead and pay it. How? We generate the check. And again, there could be many invoices that met the criteria, and they would all be shown in the register, and we would generate the checks for those to be paid. Once you click on generate, it shows you this dialog box, and it tells you what's happened. So basically, that payment that was generated is now in our payment batch. It's payment batch number 1. I'm going to close here and look for that. And I'll find that in AP transactions, payment batch. Okay. There it is. You could see here it says description system generated payment batch. And the type also says system. It's still open. Not yet ready to post, but we don't really have to say yes, only if we want to. And I always take the shortcut. So your next step is to print and post. So we want to print the check, then post the information to update both the AP and the GL. So print post. We get the check window, and it tells us our next check will be 5055. And of course, you recognize that's the check number that we put in as our starting check. So that's fine. We're now going to go ahead and print. So this is our lovely, lovely, lovely check. Of course, you have to use your imagination because this information now would be printed on a check that you put in your printer. So the check will be in the printer with the company's heading, logo, and address, etc. And then it would print this information in the appropriate fields. So you can see here you've got both a check and also an advice portion where it lists the vendor, the invoice number being paid, and so on. Okay. So that's a check. Now, once you close out the check, and I'm clicking the X to close, you will always get this message. This dialog box will ask, were all the checks printed successfully? If they were not, you would choose no, and they would be voided, and you'd have to reprint. If they are printed properly, you take them out of the printer and they're good, then you would say yes, and they will be printed and posted. So the accounts would be updated. Accounts payable would then be reduced, right? And any other affected accounts. Okay, so we'll say yes, they were printed properly. And now it's asking, do we want to go ahead and post this batch now to update the accounts? Yes, we do. So I'll click yes. Tells me that it has been done, the payment has been updated, and there is another batch created by this for the general ledger. So I'll close out the message that it tells me it is. All right, so once I've done that, I'll just take a quick look at it, make sure everything is good. I will close this window and I will go to the general ledger, transactions, batch list, and here we have it. So now this is the only open batch. It has not yet been posted. I'll open it so you can see it. It shows us accounts payable. It has been debited and also debited for the discount. And the discount account is credited and your bank account, because you've issued a check, is credited. So that's perfect. You could post it here, or you can just continue what you're used to posting from here. You've selected the batch to post and click post. And yes. Now it tells me that it's done. Shows me that the status is posted. And I'll close out the general ledger batch list. And of course, if I go to GL reports and I go to the trial balance, I will see an update there. So there's the update. Accounts payable is now 0. We've got purchase discounts and we've got the office inventory, office supplies inventory. And our bank is affected. So AP, the bank, and the discount were affected by this entry. Okay. So I will close that window. I'll close this window as well. And we'll move on to the H payables. I want to show you that H payables report. So AP transaction reports, H payables. Because we only had one invoice and we paid that invoice, if we should print again, nothing is shown. However, if you want to see the information, You can say you want to apply the details or choose applied details, fully paid transactions, and vendors with zero balance, and then reprint. Notice the dates already changed, so I don't have to do that. There you go. Now you've got the information. But accounts payable is zero, nothing owing. Good. Now, any of these reports you can print. The check register, putting journals. Check register shows you all the checks that were issued, so you can print that. I like to put the general ledger summary on. I'll put that on, and I'll show you this report before moving on. So there it is. This is your vendor number, vendor name, the amounts and the discounts, the check number, and the check date. I'll close that and close here as well. So that completes the AP section, and now we're going to move on to accounts receivable. So this section will be accounts receivable, and it will probably be about 15 to 20 minutes long. So let's start with that. We're going to activate accounts receivable first of all. So administrative services and data activation. Yes. Proceed. Accounts receivable. Next. Activate. Once it's done, we go into our accounts receivable, and the first thing we do is our setup. AR setup. Options. Again, your company will decide what names and phone numbers go here. In processing, I would prefer to put on the processing recurring charges just in case I have a charge that is continuous and it's always the same. So it may be bi-weekly, weekly, monthly, etc. I want to be able to set up recurring payments or charges if I want to, without having to come back and put the option on. I also want to allow anything that says allow, so that I can again not have to come back in. So allow, and credit checks for our customers should be put on, especially if you want to have the option of entering credit limits for your customers. They must be on. And anything that is allowed, most of these are already put on for you as default, so you don't have to worry. But those that are not, that says allow, I would put on. And again, no retainage of accounts. We're not retaining fees. That's not the type of company. Lawyers are a very good example for that, but this is not that type of company. So in transactions, we have two invoice types. One is item, and it's used when a company uses or keeps track of inventory, like they have a list of inventory that they buy and sell. If not, then it should be set to summary. For our exercise, it is summary. In summary, you're just putting a description of what's purchased. You are not selecting an item from a list. Or you're not selecting an item for sale. You're just entering a summary. Okay? Default bank must be there, so let me put that in right away. Let's go over the receipt options. So the default is receipt, but we also have, similar to AP, prepayment, unapplied cash is different, and applied document is for debit and credit notes, and miscellaneous receipts is for cash sales. Okay? So very similar. You find a lot of similarities to this and AP. And here are a few more. Allow. Now this one says forced printing of deposit slips, and I would say to keep it on because the deposit slip is what you will use to bring your money. You will have that along with the money that you have collected from your sales, and you'll bring the deposit slip to the bank with the money or the checks, cash or checks, and you make your deposit, and the bank stamps that deposit slip and gives it copy to you. Okay, so I would say, just as a reminder, to just, yeah, force the printing of that. Let's see if there's anything else. Allow printing of invoices. Definitely, you want to be able to print your invoices. A printing of deposit slips. These two work together. Create deposit slip when receipt batch is created. Absolutely. Allow edit after deposit slip is printed. Sure, if you need to make any changes. And if there are refund checks, check for duplicate checks. Definitely a warning or an error. And in numbering, you can again change to 10 if you like. I won't waste time to put in different length here, but you can change the length of each of these numbers for your invoice, debit note, credit notes, etc. Statement. I would come to the statement tab and I would put on print zero balance statements. And the reason for that is if a customer asks for a statement but they do not have an outstanding balance, if this option is not on, you're not able to print that statement. Okay, so we'll put that on. Age unapplied credit notes and debit notes as current, so it will show in the current column or by the date. Current is the better option of the two. And same for these, age receipts, unapplied cash, and unapplied prepayments as current. So we've covered all of these. Let me just show them to you. And so now I will save my options and close. Account sets. So for accounts receivable, you also need an account set. And I will show you on the exercise so that you have an idea. So account set would be ACCREC. It's going to be for accounts receivable. We will also need a billing cycle and interest profile for calculating interest for overdue invoice balances for our customers. Then we'll also set up a term. We will add our customer group, and then our customer. And then we'll process the invoice and the receipt, and we'll be finished with that. So let me continue here. ACCREC. And of course, now we're going to fill in the blanks with the information asked for. Specifically, it asks for the accounts receivable account, the discounts account, the prepayment account, and the write-offs account. So those are all the things, and I would add and close. Billing cycles, you must have at least one of those set up as well. And it's the frequency. How often do you bill your customers? So in this case, we're going to be billing them monthly. And that would be 30 days on average. That's it. That's all you need. You don't need an address for emitting or anything of that sort. You're just adding the code, okay? And the frequency. Then add every 30 days. Add and close. Distribution codes. So I would add sales here so that when I make a sale, I can quickly select that code. I don't have to remember what the sales account number is. So, but we do have two sales accounts. So sales admin, I'm going to put that one, and I will select the appropriate account number to link to. So sales admin is here, and add. And in fact, I'm going to add another one. So I have to give it a different name, slightly different name. So sales 2 maybe, and then I will call that one service. And I will put the appropriate division here. Let's see, one for service, notice. And then, and again, if we're selling inventory items, these two would be used. We'll put those information here, but we're not selling or buying inventory, so we're not using the inventory option. Then add. So I've added these two, sales 2 and just sales for admin. I have two distribution codes added, and I can use them in my invoices. Dunning messages are messages that I'm pretty sure some of you have seen on invoices. Thank you for keeping your account current if you pay on time. And if it's overdue, you may see please pay amount showing. If it's overdue 31 to 60 days, it says payment overdue, please pay promptly, and so on and so on. Okay, and then they start getting a little bit rough. Over 90 days, account overdue, all credit on hold, right? So these are just messages, and of course you can change these to whatever your company wants you to have. So nothing needs to be saved. I haven't made any changes. I'll accept the defaults. Interest profile. I will double click there, and in interest profile, I'll just show it to you before I move on to it. Set an interest profile for COM. The code is COM. 2% for AR accounts. So if they're overdue more than 5 days, we will charge them a 2% interest. So let's complete that. The name is COM. %2% for AR accounts. I'm going to add the word overdue. And here we must choose the interest income account. That's where this interest is going to go. So interest income account. If overdue 5 days is when we will start charging. We could put round up. Again, these are all options your company will decide on. And the minimum interest charge, I would say set the minimum interest charge as $1. The annual interest is 2%. So that completes that. And we're going to add. So we now add this interest profile, which we're going to need for our customer and customer groups. Payment codes are already there. So I'll show you. There's cash, check, and we could add Visa if we wanted to. Right in the same window, we could click new and add Visa. This is just to show you. It's not part of the exercise. And if we're adding a credit card, then we change the payment type to credit card and add. So now you'll see we have 3 different payment options here. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and do the terms because we don't have any salespeople, so we won't do any salespeople and their commissions and their target and so on. We'll move on to terms. 2 and 30. 2%. And days net 30 days. And so this would be 100% due in 30 days, 100, 2% if paid in 10 days. Add. Oh, not yet actually, because we want to also calculate the base for the discount with the tax excluded. We're not giving a discount on the tax portion. So we're going to go add. And since that's the only one, we're going to click X to close. Now, if this was an inventory company, in items is where you would actually add your items. So I'll just quickly show you what it looks like. So this is it. You would put the item number and the name of the item, and you would fill in the different information that is being asked for here. Then once you've done that, you can enter the price, the sale price of that, and so on. Okay, so let's move back to the exercise. We're going to add our customer group and then our customer. So we're here, customer group, then the customer. So in AR customers, we go to customer groups, type the customer group name and the description, and fill in the blanks, basically. I'm double clicking to get these very quickly. So as you can see, all these things that we've just added are needed for the group and for the customers. I would also recommend putting on print statements so that you are able to print customer statements. It should be on. Now let's just talk quickly about the account type. There are two types. Open item. That means that when a customer sends in a payment for an invoice, it goes specifically to the invoice being paid. The other option, balance forward. If a customer sends an amount in, it is going towards the reduction of the balance, not to a specific invoice. It just goes towards the balance. You won't see an invoice to select. It will just have a balance, and the balance is being reduced by the payment. Now, it also has an order to it. So it will start by paying off or going towards the oldest invoice. So when it's in balance forward, you will see older invoice will drop off and the balance will just continue to reduce. In credit, I would put the credit check on if you are going to put a credit limit. Even if there's not a credit limit for the group, there may be credit limits for the individual customers, so you need to put these on. Okay? And I would put on all of them because it doesn't hurt to have them. But if you're going to leave any, you can leave that one. Okay? All right, invoicing. In invoicing, we don't have a salesperson, so we won't put anything there, but we sure have a tax that we can put as a default. So I'm going to go here in tax group, select the tax group, and now the tax authority shows. And whenever we are calculating for invoices, it will now know what tax to use as a default. And if we had several types of taxes, then for individual invoices, you could select the type of tax to use, the group. Okay, so this is finished. This is our group code. This is the description of it. And this is our credit. This is our invoicing. And we're going to add and close. Now, we're going to add the customer. So we go into customers, select the customer, or type the customer name. My mistake. So Beck 123, and Beckford is the name. Beckford Inc. Again, you would have your business number there, but for our exercise, we don't have a business number. So I'm going to select the group, and notice now that all of these are active. Contact, you would put the person to contact for that. And in processing, Most things are filled in by the group, the customer group. So you just need to now add the things that need to be added. So like payment code, how would you like to get payments from your customer? What's the most common way? If it is check, you would choose check. If it's Visa, you choose Visa. These are all defaults. The group credit bureau information, if you got that, you can put that here. And if you have for this customer a credit limit, which we do, I'll show that to you. So this is the information that we're putting in, and there's a credit limit of 3,000. So I'm going to put 3,000 here. All you need. Total outstanding balance exceeds the credit limit of 3,000. Then you can extend the payment to them, the invoice to them. Now, in the invoicing page, nothing needs to change. We already have our tax. So that's it for this. The address, contact, processing, invoicing, and add. So we're almost finished. We're going to enter an invoice and then receive a payment for that invoice. So AR transactions, invoice batch list, new batch. And in that section, we're going to say it's invoice January 2019. And we already have summary here. We select our customer. And the date of the invoice is January the 13th. So this is it. On January the 13th, 2019, Beckford Inc. purchases goods on credit for $13.50 plus taxes. And that's the invoice number BD 2019. So I'm going to enter that right away. 13th is already there. And the invoice number. And we're going to choose either the revenue account by clicking here and choosing sales, or we're going to use the distribution code. So I'm going to use the first one, sales admin. We're going to say that that's the one, and the amount of the sale is $13.50. The taxes should be 13%. So there it is, $175.50. And the terms is already there. Due date, discount date, possible discount for the customer if the customer pays by January the 23rd. And the totals show. This is our summary page. So I'll add that. And now, of course, I have to post it in order for the customer aged trial balance to be up to date. The aged trial balance will show all outstanding invoices. So I'll show it to you here. AP transaction reports, aged trial balance, and for the end of the month, anything before or on that date will show. So again, there is nothing because we have not yet posted. So I'll close this. I'll go back to the batch and post. And we'll need to print the deposit slip. So it's going to ask us to do that. In fact, it says you must print the batch listing before. So I will go ahead and print the batch. And then it will also ask for the deposit slip. Notice you have invoice, receipt, adjustment, refund batches that you can print. So there's the batch of the entries, in this case, just invoice. I'll close it now and close here as well and post. Yes. Tells me it's posted and that there is another batch in the general ledger. Fantastic. So I will reprint the aged trial balance and then I'll go to the general ledger to see it. So there we go. And there it is. Total outstanding AR is 1525.50. Close it, and I'll also close here. Now I go to the general ledger, and there will be a batch from AR. Here it is. Source ledger AR, 1525.50. I'll open it so you could see what happens. You could see here accounts receivable is debited, sales is credited, and the HST payable is also credited. So I'll close and then post to the general ledger to update. Post, and yes, and close. And so in the general ledger trial balance, it's now updated with accounts receivable and HST payable. There you can see that. So HST payable is now there, 175.50. There's your sales, right? All right, so you can see, and there's also the accounts receivable. Great, so I'm closing this window and moving now to entering the receipt from this customer. So I'll show that to you. On January 30th, 2019, Beckford Inc. pays by check number 1085 for 1525.50. So we need to apply the receipt to the invoice BD 2019, process the transactions, then print the deposit slip and print the batch status report. So I'm going to do that now. So here we have it. Accounts receivable transactions, receipt batch list, new, and from there I'll just say receipt, January 2019. And you can see you have receipt or prepayment, etc. This is a receipt specifically, and it was made on the 30th of January. So the customer did not take advantage of the discount period. So here we are. Now, in this section, after selecting the customer and putting the date of the payment and the check, so the check was 1085. Your next step is to go to the detail area here. Oh, by the way, the receipt amount was 1525.50. So let's put that. After you've done that, your next step is to go to the Go button to show the invoices that are outstanding. So if you look down here, nothing's shown until you press the Go button. Now there's the invoice. So the balance owing is 1525. Discount available is 27, but it will not be applied because it was paid too late. In the apply column, this is how you apply a payment to an invoice. You must double click or press the space bar, click and press the space bar or double click to change from no to yes. And once you've done that, you can go ahead and add the invoice. You could see the changes, applied amount is there, and then add and close. So of course, again, we must now go ahead and post the batch, and it asks me to, if I want to go ahead and post, it's going to ask me also to print the deposit slip. So you must print the batch listing for the batch before you set it to ready. Okay, no problem. I will do that. So print. Notice it now has receipt. We're printing the batch for receipt. Great. So that's what it looks like. Just leave it there so you can view it a little bit. Then I will close it out. Close this window as well and post. It's going to ask me now to print the deposit slip. So the deposit slip has not yet been printed. So no problem, I'll close. And here's the button for printing the deposit slip. So I'll click on it and I will just go ahead and print. So you will see what the deposit slip looks like. It would list all the customers and their checks that they've used for payments and the amount that was paid. You bring this along with all of those checks and cash or whatever it is to the bank, and this is the deposit slip that would be taken by the bank and stamped for you. And they just deposit the money in the bank account. So now that we have printed the deposit slip, we can go ahead and post successfully the batch. Done and close. So AR is now 0, of course. So if I try to print the aged trial balance, let's go into the reports. Aged trial balance, it will say that there is nothing there. No records, because that invoice that we had outstanding has now been paid. So in order to see them, you put on these options: zero balance, applied details, fully paid transactions, and print. And there it is. Zero balance, but it shows you some details. Good. Now, of course, we need to update the general ledger with the new information. AR has been reduced because we received some money. The bank account has increased. So we are going to go into GL, transactions, batch listing. Also, your tax has been affected. So we'll double click. Well, not in the case of the receipt. So let's first look at that. Yeah. So this is our receipt. No, let me just see here. No, that's not the receipt. So let me close. Here it is. This is the one. So the receipt, accounts receivable, and then your bank is credited. So accounts receivable is credited and your bank is debited, which makes sense that your bank account is increasing and your accounts receivable is decreasing by the receipt of payment from your customer. So that's it for this section here. Of course, if I should now go ahead and post the batch, then our trial balance and our income statement and our balance sheet will be up to date with the current balances for all of the accounts. So let's take a quick look at that. GL reports, trial balance, print, and there we have it. So accounts receivable is now 0. And our bank has increased. So increase in the bank and our accounts receivable is now 0. Okay, so I could actually stop here, or I can just go ahead and print the balance sheet and the income statement and have that on the recording. So I will go ahead and do that. General ledger, financial reporter, and print financial statements. And I'll print the income statement since it's already selected, and I'll go to print. So this is the income statement, and I'll now go and print the balance sheet. I'll close this. I'll browse. Anything with BAL is balance sheet. I'll choose the first one and print. And there we have it. So I'm going to print the other reports as well so that they're here for you to refer to. So the GL batch status, I must go to General Ledger if I'm printing the GL batch status. So General Ledger batch status is in GL reports. I'll look for it. Batch status shows me what's posted, what's deleted, what's still open. So I want to know that. Are there any batches still open that needs to be posted? Because if there is, that means my trial balance, my balance sheet, and my income statement are not up to date. So I'm looking here and I see that all the batches have been posted. So my reports are all up to date. So I will close that. Each module has a batch status. So if you're asked to print your accounts receivable batch status, then it's in AR transaction reports, and you will look for batch status. It will be here somewhere. So there it is. And if it's accounts payable, the same thing. So AP transaction reports and batch status, and you can print that as well. And a customer statement and invoice can be printed like, okay, so let me go back to accounts receivable. And in the customer invoice, if I go to AR transactions, batch list, and I go open this batch, you could see here print invoice. So I can print that invoice. And then go ahead and print from here. So there's the lovely, lovely invoice that we have printed. And I'll close that. And I'll also close this. And so now I'd like to print the statements. So I would go into AR customer reports, statements, labels, letters and labels would be the option to use, the icon, and I would double click there. And right here, again, if you want to see zero balance customers and fully paid customers, you'll have to put these options on. So I'll put them on. And the date range, it depends also what dates you are looking for. I want for January, so I will leave that option and then print. So there is the statement. Okay, so that's it for the general ledger. And also, I would say yes, that the statement was printed properly. Accounts receivable and accounts payable.